Today we're going to be taking a look at this, the EDU450 frame kit from Hexsoon. Now, if you're a regular subscriber of the channel, you might be thinking, I'm sure I've seen this video before. Don't worry, you're not going mad, because I have reviewed this frame in the past. I did a complete overview and build video of this frame on the channel a little while back, and I'll put a link to that in the description of this video. However, what we've got here is an updated version of the frame kit that now includes a power distribution board, but also some LEDs. And the really interesting thing about the LEDs included with this kit is that they are addressable and they can be programmed via a LUA script in Ardupilot. What we're going to do today is take a closer look at this new frame kit. I'm going to do a quick overview of what you get in the box, get it put together, and then we'll concentrate on the differences between this and the first one, but then jump into that new power distribution board and walk you through some of the features and capabilities of these LEDs, including showing you how to use a LUA script to change their color as the aircraft moves. Now, if you're interested in getting one of these, please do check out the link in the description to 3DXR in the UK. They're a fantastic dealer that sells these frames. I'll also put a link to Hexsoon in there as well. We would not have been able to make this video without their support, so please do check them out. Anyway, let's get on with it. Let's take a look at what's in this new kit. If you are interested in seeing the original video, I will also link to that in the description of it as well. But let's get on with this one first of all. Okay, so to dive into this one. Now, as you can see, the box on this one has been updated compared to the last one. It's now showing the LEDs on here as well. And if we flip around to the back, they show you everything that's included. And you now have the LED power distribution board listed as well. The nice thing about these Hexsoon kits is they include almost everything you need to get up and running from a frame, motor and ESC point of view. Because you have your frame, you do have 4 motors included, the ESCs. So all you need to add is your flight controller and all your other electronics. And now that they've added this power distribution board as well, it makes it an even more complete package. Lifting the lid inside, we have some foam, which we're not going to need. And the first thing we'll find is the instructions for both the frame and this new power distribution board. They are calling it a PDB-40A, which includes both a 5-volt and a 12-volt back on board as well. They're saying it's a 4-ounce copper 4-layer PCB, 6 ESCs in total it can support up to, and it has an input voltage range of 9 to 26 volt or up to 6S with regulated 5 and 12 volts outputs. You've got the LED outputs as well. It supports a peak current of 6 times 40 amp on each motor, as well as a continuous current of 6 times 25. It's not going to be a problem in this one because they include the motors in as standard. They're stating on the back up to 3 amps on the 5 volt and up to 2 amps on the 12 volt output, and that should cover most things. And the nice thing is that's also going to be able to power your Cube Autopilot as well. So jumping in the box, what we have is our top and bottom frames like we had the first time. We have our ESCs included, Hexsoon 20 amps, 3 to 4S. Now that is interesting, and that is something worth noting, that whilst the power distribution board is supporting up to 6S, the ESCs are only rated to 4S, so do be aware of that, because that is something that could catch you out. We've got that power distribution board here in the packaging. You can now see the new LEDs. Now these are addressable LEDs. There are 2 individual LED modules in each corner unit, and then you've got them with a little board on the back with a connector, and then the wiring harnesses included as well, and then that goes back to this power distribution board. And then in the rest of the box, we've got all the other accessories like we had before. So we've got some wires, we've got our XT60 connector with some wires and heat shrink tubing. We've got our 4 motors included. Again, these are the 2216s, 880 kV motors, which are handed. The nice thing on these, just like I said last time, is they have the little arrow on there that shows you the direction, and they have the dot on the top as well, which signifies which propeller goes where. We've got 4 of them. Very similar to the old DJI motors on the F450 frames and stuff like that. We've got our bolt kit. for putting the unit together. And then we've got all of the other parts, including our arms. And if you didn't see the first video, the nice thing about the arms on this frame is that they are teardrop shaped, which gives them additional strength. If I can actually get into them, I'll be able to show you that. They are carbon fiber, but they have that teardrop shape that gives them that rigidity. We've got our legs partly assembled already with the long legs included, and something I can see is that there has actually been a change on this, and rather than you actually having two separate legs, by the look of it, you now have the ability to take the rod out. Now what I mean by that is on the original frame they included two of these. You had one which came to here, which was just that length, or you had the longer one with the leg included here, whereas now this actually looks different. This turns from the feel of it, and you can now withdraw the leg rather than leave it in. That's a bit better design overall. If I just grab the other frame just to show you. So on this one, the carbon fiber rod was fixed into the bottom, whereas now on this one, that carbon fiber rod, that was fixed in, whereas this one is now removable, and it's got that bit that that went in and latched, and this feels like this turns or locks. There we go. That seems to lock it in place, and that allows you to put it in or out. So basically it's that lock mechanism for the legs. So the nice thing with that is, rather than them having to ship two of these, you've just got the one. Is there any shorter bits, or have they included a shorter leg set in anything, I wonder, or like a cover for that? No, so it seems if you don't want to use the leg set, you would simply just leave that out and land on that. I don't know if there's anything they're including to allow you to actually replace that with that. We'll have a look at that as we go through. We've then got the other pieces, which is the top and bottom pieces. And then we've got our propellers included, just like they did last time. And these are the handed propellers, again with the silver top and the grey top, depending on what motor you put them on. And if I flip the motors over, you can see they've got the colours on there ready to rock and roll. So overall, the kit is very similar to what we had before, but there are some changes, more than I actually realised up front. So they have made some changes mostly around the legs. So the next thing I'm going to do is get this frame assembled. I'm not going to go through that too much on this video. I'm going to go and smash it together, and I'll come back once that's done. Okay, so I've got the frame together. You can see we've got the motors on, we've got the frame tightened up, and everything is now in place and it's nice and solid. Some things you just need to be aware of when you are mounting this, and that is that you get your motors on the right order, because you do need to take into account that the threads on the motors are handed, and you need to make sure that you've got your front ones, which are for me here, rotating inwards. So the fronts are rotating in on this and the backs are rotating out, and we've then got our silver to silver, black to black on corner to corner. You've got your ESCs in the arms now as well, with all the wiring in the middle. I haven't at this point mounted this, the power distribution board, and that really needs to go in the middle, and we'll take a look at this now shortly, and I'll end up having to strip the plate to put that in after. I'd rather do it differently for the video, because for me, I wanted to walk you through both stages and show you both things separately. However, what I would advise is, if you were building it, you want to be getting that PDB in early, but what I'll end up doing in a minute is actually actually taking the top frame back off again, mounting the power distribution board, and then doing the LEDs at the end. But what we will do now is take a look at that board separately first, so I can walk you through some of the extra features on that. And before I mount it, I also want to show you some of the cool things you can do with it with Ardupilot as well, but we'll do that outside the frame rather than in. But overall, as long as you follow the instructions, it's fairly straightforward. You've just got to make sure that you get your arms correct, your legs correct, and then you have the correct motors on the correct corners, tighten everything up, and it's nice and solid, ready to go. So what we'll do now is take a look at this PDB as well as this LED situation as well. So, as I said, in this new kit, we now have this power distribution board and LEDs. If we open both of these little packs up, these are available separately as well if you've got the original frame kit that I spoke about before. So we have the power distribution board in this foil pack. And whilst it's called a power distribution board, it does both jobs. It controls the LEDs as well as handles the power distribution for the frame as well, if you want to do it that way. When you open this up, you get these little plastic holders for mounting it into the frame, and we'll take a look at them when we actually do that. We've then got our connections on the board as well as our connections for the LEDs. What's interesting, when you do get them, they do come with these little blank offs over the top. These will simply pull off, so we can just do that all the way around, because we're not going to want these on most of these. So what I'm going to do is end up taking them off, all of them, just to show you the connections that we do have. As I mentioned earlier, this also has the BECS on board too, both 5 volt, and it allows it to power your autopilot, as well as 12 volt too. And if I hop over just to the instructions here, you can see that they show us what the various pinouts are on the board. So we've got our main battery input at the bottom, our main XT60 from our battery. We've then got power and ground, power and ground, power and ground, power and ground, power and ground. That is our ESC outputs directly from this to the motors. So you need, again, be aware that this will take up to 6S, but the ESCs they supply are only 4S. We then up here on the right hand side have our 5 volt and 12 volt outputs, which are our direct solder outputs. And then we have here a 5 volt output as well, up to 3 amp. And this one can be used for connecting up to a Cube autopilot and actually powering the autopilot from this power distribution board. And we'll have a look at that one in a minute. And then you've got a dedicated 12 volt output here. Then along the top here, we have our LED connection. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is a quad, so they've only supplied 4, but this does work with a hex as well. And then we have our signal input, which will allow us to actually control the LEDs from the LUA script within Ardupilot. And again, we'll take a look at that in a minute too. Moving over to the LEDs, if we open the packet, in here, what you end up having is the LED modules themselves, which are these little 4 modules here, which are that sort of teardrop style shape. As I mentioned, there are 2 addressable LEDs in each one, and these go on each arm. We then have our wiring harness. We have this harness here. So this one is designed to go on the power board into this plug up here on the right hand side, and this is the one that goes to our flight controller for doing our LUA script programming. And then we've got our connections for our LEDs to go from the board here. So we're going to go number 3 and number 4. Oh, wrong side. Make sure we get it right. There we go. And then we simply attach our LEDs onto each side. Nice and simple, plug and play to the LED modules. And that is them all connected up. Now, obviously, when you're doing this, you're going to want to do this on the frame, whereas here I've simply got it on the side. So what we're going to do now is get our autopilot. Okay, so I have my autopilot, and we're going to use a Cube Orange for this one, or a Cube Gold, as you can see here. So the connections on this is fairly straightforward. We have our main power cable, which goes into our board, and that will provide our 5 volts from the PDB into the autopilot to power it. So rather than using a separate power board, we can use that one. Then for the addressable LEDs, we have this harness here, which I talked about earlier, which plugs into the board, and it has on one side that connector, and then the other you have these two headers. As you can see, these are traditional RC style headers because they're going to need to go into the pins on our autopilot down here, ready to be controlled by our LUA script. The wiring for these is fairly simple. What you have is the one header with white and black and the one header with white and brown. The whites are ground, and whilst that isn't your traditional wiring colours, it is for this. So when you're connecting it up, the whites go to ground. You then have your black and brown. So the header with the black is our clock signal for controlling the LEDs, and the brown wire is our signal wire or our data line for controlling the LEDs. When you're setting this up with the LUA script, you will need to tell it which one is clock and which one is the data line. So what I'm going to do is plug in the one with the clock on aux 5. Then I'm going to plug in the one with the signal into aux 6. And as you can see then, if I go on the side, we have the whites at the top, which is negative, and then we've got the signal wires at the bottom. There's no power on these because all of the power is provided by the PDB itself. Once we've done that, we then have the ability to get this all powered up and then take a look at actually controlling these via the LUA script. You can control these in multiple different ways. We can tell the system that we just want them to replicate the status of the LEDs from Ardupilot, or we can tell it to do some other things as well, and we'll take a look at that a little bit more in a minute. Okay, so to walk you through the configuration for this in Ardupilot, there are a few things you need to be aware of. You first of all need to enable scripting, then there is some configuration, and I'll walk you through that now as well. So what we need to do is check that we do have scripting enabled. So I'm going to go into the full param tree and I'm just going to search for SCR underscore, and that should bring up all of the options. And what we're looking for is SCR underscore enable, which is that one up there. It's quite small and hard to see, I know, but it is there. And then you need to make sure that that is set to number 1 to enable the scripting to make sure that is working. The next thing you may need to do is increase the heap size, which is the memory available for the LED script. Because this is quite a complex one, the standard number may not be enough. So I've increased it to 90,000 on mine. I would advise you set it to something like 80,000, 80, 90, something like that. I think it's set at like 45,000 initially, so you may want to up that because that just helps to make sure that there's enough memory available for the script. You would then click Write Param. The next thing we also then need to do is make sure that the bird count configuration is set to 6 as well, because we're going to be using the aux 5 and 6 pins. So what we're going to do is search for BRD underscore, and we find the param for that, and then we want to make sure that BRD underscore count, PWM count, which is this one here, BRD underscore PWM underscore count is set to 6. That's standard set to 4. So make sure you set that to 6. Click Write Params. We then need to configure the correct servo outputs to send the signal for the LEDs to control them. We do that under Setup. We go under our servo options, which will pop up now. And what we need to do is set our servo output channels, which is channel 13 and 14 on the Cube, which is 5 and 6 on the Autopilot. We're going to set the control to script 1 and then the clock to profi LED clock. You can set these either way around. You just need to make sure that that aligns with the actual wiring on your Autopilot. And what this is telling the script is what channels on the aux output that we're going to be connecting to. The final thing then to do is to actually put a script on the Autopilot. Now I've already downloaded a couple from Ardupilot already. They do have scripts available. To do this, we go into Mav FTP, we go into our Autopilot, and we should now have this script folder here, which will be empty because we've now enabled scripting on the Autopilot. If this isn't showing, just reboot your Autopilot after doing the settings changes because it might not come up. What I'm then going to do is hop over to my desktop and I'm going to drag across a script called LED2. This is the one that allows it to change the colors of the LEDs depending on the position of the IMU. What we'll now do is reboot. I'll go back to the overhead and then I'll actually show you the output from this script. So you can see the LEDs have now changed and that Lua script is actually running. So if I now pick up the autopilot and move it, you can see the colors are actually changing because it's now replicating the movement of the autopilot on the LEDs. It's quite hard to show you in good light, but you can see that the LEDs are changing color with the movement of the autopilot. Now, there are lots of other things that you can do with this. For instance, we can even set it up for navigation lights. So what I'll then do is hop back over to the desktop. What we'll do is change that Lua script for another one, which is one I've downloaded from the guys over at Ardupilot. We will delete Lua 2. I will just bring in the next one, which is Hexsoon LEDs. Again, what we'll do is reboot the autopilot. And when that fires up, you will then see that the LEDs have now changed. We've got 2 reds and 2 greens, and this is now giving us navigation lights. The nice thing though about this script is it also offers a beacon function as well. So for instance, if I just go and arm the autopilot, you'll see that we then now have the beacon function. So when the aircraft is armed, it's actually flashing the LEDs as a beacon, but still giving you the navigation lights on each side as well. So the nice thing about these scripts is it offers a huge amount of functions and capabilities. Really, what you can do is pretty much endless. It simply comes down to your abilities to program the Lua script. I'm not going to dive too much more into this. I just wanted to show you a basic overview of what can be done, especially with this new Hexsoon LED kit. And it's really nice to see this move on, and we're seeing a lot more coming from the Ardupilot script side of things. Okay, so that's pretty much it from me on this one. I have to say, I really do like these Hexsoon frame kits. There's really a lot of nice little features here with the teardrop arms and that new LED kit like you've got there with this new power board that has that LED functionality. You've got the options then within Ardupilot to set up the Lua scripting, and it's just nice to see some of these nice features moving to ready to build craft, because things like color changing LEDs when you arm and stuff were primarily on ready to fly stuff. There really is no limit to what you're going to be able to do with Lua scripting and Ardupilot, and this is just one use case, and it's nice to see manufacturers starting to make hardware that's going to be compatible with that. Now, as I said in the first video on this frame kit, you can get this from 3DXR in the UK. If you're interested in getting one, please do check out their website. There is a link to it in the description. A massive thank you from me to Ben at 3DXR. We would not have been able to make a lot of the content that I've made without his support, and he is a stockist for these frames. Also, a big thank you to Hexsoon for sending this one over to me, the new upgraded version. Massive thanks from me. I'm going to look forward to trying to see what else they've got coming in the near future, including some of their bigger ones as well, maybe. So keep an eye out. You never know. We might be able to get one of them on the channel as well. Anyway, that's it from me. Stay safe, look after yourselves, and I will speak to you guys again soon.